Gear Tasting Radio is brought to you by Imminent Threat Solutions. ITS provides knowledge that empowers individuals with indispensable skill sets to explore the world and prevail against all threats. Right now, as a special thank you for all podcast listeners, we're offering 10% off in the ITS store. Simply use the code GTR to save 10% at store.itstactical.com. Welcome to Gear Tasting Radio, where we offer an in-depth look into the usage and philosophy behind the equipment in our lives. I am Brian Black, joined today, as always, by Rob Henderson.
Hello.
And today we are going to be talking about camping with a couple of different caveats. So we're going to talk about how to select the campsite, how to set up a campsite, and kind of some order of operations behind that. So we started talking through some different scenarios of how we could talk about camping and campsites, and, you know, I feel like I have camped in the woods professionally, so therefore I might be some kind of SME on
like a homeless
camping in
man.
the woods. Yeah,
I'm good at sleeping outside.
I mean, I have been in weather all the way down to negative 13 degrees or so, so I feel like I've kind of camped the gamut. And living in Texas, I've definitely been in, 100-degree weather camping.
So if you could pick hot or cold,
man,
if it had to be one or the other, really hot or really cold,
it's really a trade-off.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if I were to think about it that way, because camping in the heat, if you're and this is a little caveat here, this is tent camping, not like super roughing it under a bivvy or a shelter type of situation, like a survival shelter type situation. This is, camping in the woods.
You have a tent.
What most people, think of. But, obviously there's different kinds of camping. There's car camping, there's glamping, which I think is a level above glamping.
Yeah.
You've got more stuff with you.
Yeah.
But where I was going with that is you asked about which is worse, camping in the heat or the cold. And, I mean, in the heat, you could always bring a little battery-powered fan, which really does help.
Sure.
Believe it or not, you would think, oh, that's stupid, I don't need that. But trust me.
Yeah.
I've been in enough Boy Scout campouts in the heat of summer to know that little 8D battery powered fan is a godsend.
Yep.
So, I think that I would probably choose the cold.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I think I would choose the heat only because, like, cold hurts.
Yeah.
Like, it's
I get
physically
that.
painful versus hot is just, like, gross and it feels bad.
I actually really love layering.
Oh, I do too.
So,
Bundle up.
yeah.
But, like, negative 13, you can bundle.
Yeah, so let's put this into another context. I would camp in that if I could car camp.
Yeah.
Meaning, because when I did that,
jump in
when I was in negative 13 at that Man with Sniper Challenge, it was not fun because I only had what I brought with me. So
no refuge at all.
Yeah, I mean, we were able to start a fire that night that it got that cold, but still, it was pretty brutal.
That's nuts.
I mean, it was literally so cold that I couldn't sleep in the tent. Like, I had to get out, and I mean, part of it was claustrophobia, which came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Sharing a tent with my shooting partner, and it was weird. I've never really had that, but anyway, I wound up sleeping by the fire.
You just like curl up?
Yeah, in my sleeping bag.
Nice.
But yeah, I had to roll over every 15 minutes or so.
Get the other side.
And get some oxygen in the fire to keep it going. It was kind of ridiculous. But
man.
Yeah, anyway. So I think that, if we start at how to select a campsite, that's probably primary. So now this goes for whether you're hiking up to a campsite or whether you're driving up to a campsite. You really want to look for, first off, I would look for what the terrain looks like. So meaning, is there level ground to set up a tent on? And that's probably one of the primary things that I look for personally. And I look for potential water runoff. So if it's going to rain, if there is potential for rain, which I always expect every time I go camping, I always put, some kind of rain suit jacket combo in with my stuff, no matter if there's rain in the forecast or not. I'm just that anal retentive about not wanting to get caught in the torrential downpour.
Yeah.
But anyway, I always look for where the water runoff is, and you can do that a couple ways. One, you can just literally visualize the terrain, in a way to say, okay, this is higher ground here. If it was to rain, it's
if
probably
water's coming through, where's it going? Maybe don't set your tent up in a dry creek bed.
Right, exactly. And you may or may not see, trails of where water's run before, so that's not really what you're looking for.
Right.
It's not always going to be a visual,
cut and dry.
Yeah, cut and dry visual look at, where the water was before. So that's kind of the first thing. I try to set my tent up usually under trees too, and not like directly under a tree, but I like to have some kind of protection.
Like a canopy type aspect.
Because I think of worst case scenario. That's what I always think of. So, I mean, if there's going to be hail or something like that, where can I be the most protected, instead of a tent right out in the middle of somewhere? And, yes, there's always the whole, like, don't sit near a tree during a lightning storm, that type of deal. But,
well, you don't want to set up under, like, a dead tree.
Yeah, it's not like I'm standing under the tree either, so I don't know.
Yeah.
There's trade-offs, obviously, on that specific point.
Yep.
But that's definitely something I look for, because more than likely what I'm going to use the branches on the tree for are like to hang a pack from or set up a clothesline or something like that. And that's typically what I do, when I'm camping, if it's multiple days. So, I'll try to kind of arrange things to where I'm close to things like that, because I don't like pulling my pack inside the tent with me. And sometimes I don't always have a, what do you call it, like an overhang?
Vestibule or
vestibule
whatever,
to put a pack and boots and stuff under. I definitely always take my shoes inside.
Yeah.
That's something I always do. Whether I have to put down a little garbage bag or something to put them on, I always bring them inside. So
for many reasons.
Yeah.
Not including getting animals in them.
Yeah, I don't like creepy crawlies in my shoes.
And then they stay warmer.
Yeah. That too. The warmth is really like the lowest.
Yeah. It's the not having a snake in my boot.
Yeah. There's a snake in my boot.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so selecting it would be based on some of those criteria. I would also, I also am just kind of personally always on the lookout for campsites that are away from other people.
Yeah.
I don't like camping next to people if I can avoid it. So I just don't want to deal with other people's BS, and that's pretty much the primary reason.
So do you have like a priority level of like level ground comes before under a tree, or like, would you take an unlevel campsite under a tree versus a level one?
I would say the biggest thing is the water runoff. So I would rather deal with sleeping on a decline, because if I had to sleep on a hill, I would put my head up, obviously, instead of down. That's kind of a given. But, sometimes you got to say that.
I mean, if you don't, you wake up feeling funny with a little blood in your head.
Yeah. And I've tried to do that before. For some reason or another, I set it up, and that was an old lesson learned when I camped.
Like a backstretcher.
I go to lay down, I'm like, you know what? I feel a little lower, and it wasn't like a huge, obvious thing.
Just enough.
But yeah, that would probably be primary for me. Is I would probably choose someplace that didn't have the chance of getting washed out.
Gotcha.
Because even though most modern tents are, if you buy a good tent, it's going to be sealed, like the seams are sealed. But that is no guarantee that you're not going to get water in your tent.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's like cars have airbags, but like you don't want to test it by running into a wall. Like you're just tempting fate.
Yeah, and that's actually something really good to bring up. So I'm glad I was thinking along that vein. Is that when you buy a tent, make sure that it's sealed from the factory, or that you seal it yourself, because many tents will come without sealant. And the way that you can tell is you can look on the inside of a tent, and there'll be a little clear bead or line that looks like a piece of tape or something on the inside of the tent on all the seams, and that's what seam sealing looks like from the factory. If you do it yourself, you got to buy like the goo stuff from McNett or something like that, I think is who makes it, but you got to apply that with a brush. It's a huge pain in the butt, takes forever. You'll go through 20 tubes of freaking seam sealant, so it's better to just
buy one.
Yeah, it's better to spend the money and buy a quality tent that's already got the seam sealed, and you don't have to worry about it. So also a benefit to tents too is you can look for one that's got sometimes they'll call it a tub or something. So basically the bottom of the tent has a specific area that there are no seams in. It's like kind of like a boat almost. So it's got a couple of inches off the ground.
Like a rubberized type material.
Everything's one piece, so that there isn't a seam to where water can get in if it does flood out and you got a couple inches of water around you. I mean, that's not going to help you if it really floods.
Right.
But at least running water past your tent isn't going to come inside.
Every little
for the
step
most part.
helps.
So, those things are important to consider as well. But I would say that looking at water runoff is first. Second would be level ground. Third would be protection. And then really another thing I look for is a place to start a fire, because I mean, it's not camping unless Well, it's not camping unless you're kind of drinking and you're also building a fire. So those are those are kind of my criteria for making it camping.
It's more and more sounding like homelessness.
Whether that's a flask or an actual beer or something, but
yeah. No, fire is definitely important.
Yeah, I think there's nothing better than sitting around a campfire. So I always like to have one of those.
Absolutely.
And of course, a method to start the fire too. So that's kind of more the gear side of things.
Yeah.
Which we've talked about extensively on Gear Tasting Radio.
Multiple methods of fire starting.
Yeah. So, and then I'd say along those lines, setting up a campsite, I think one of the most primary things that you can always remember is get there before dark.
Yes.
It sucks trying to set up a tent
so much
in the dark.
Yeah.
And I've done it before. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it per se, but, work smarter, not harder. And that kind of comes along with that.
It's not preferable.
Right.
Especially if you have things like stakes and little items to keep track of and you set them down in the grass and then they just disappear when it gets dark.
I think I've not learned my lesson, though, as far as like hammering stakes in with a rock in the dark. Even with a headlamp, I think I've whacked my hands probably a few times doing that. So
this is a difficult lesson to continue to learn.
Right. It really is. But yeah, I tried to do that. I'll try to use natural resources too, like that. Instead of bringing a hammer and having to carry the weight or something like that, I'll usually find a rock nearby to hammer in a stake or something like that. I'll try to use things like that. In fact, there's one tent I have that I've got one less stake just for weight savings, but I always just make a stake out of a piece of down timber or something.
Interesting.
So yeah.
I like that because it's like you're like 25% confident
Yeah.
in the ability to find a stake.
It's always been, it's always worked, but
it's like you don't want to find more than one.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
It's always worked, but yeah, it's kind of cool too because it forces me to do something.
Yeah.
Like carve a little stake and hammer it in the ground.
Gets those extra reps in.
Yeah, so I like it. It's kind of a challenge, and it's not something to where I wouldn't be able to set up my tent without it. It's just kind of a bonus stakeout point, and I like to just kind of find that in the area.
Yeah.
So that, and that's another thing to look for in your campsite is there downed tree branches and is it okay to collect those and use them for firewood? You really got to find that out when you go to a campsite too, because some national forests won't allow the collection of firewood even if it's down wood that's decomposing.
They will sell you a bag of it though.
Yes, they will. Yeah, most places will sell you firewood for $10 a bundle.
Yeah,
it's pretty expensive when you buy it there. Always better to bring your own firewood.
Yeah, and so I've seen a lot of places that either won't let you or they frown upon it or whatever, but usually you can find a place that'll either let you collect or bring your own in, so that's always better. Yeah,
and then as far as, I guess kind of to jump to setting up a campsite, one, like I said, try to set it up during the day, meaning setting up your tent. I always like to gather my tinder, kindling, and fuel as I'm kind of walking around during the day, checking out a campsite. I'll start hiking. Yeah, I'll start to gather some of that. Tent's probably the first thing that I'll do just to set it up. And depending on how long I'll be there or what I'm going to be doing, I'll usually set up some type of clothesline. And sometimes that's just hanging other things off that, not just clothes. And then I'll find a good tree branch to hang my backpack from to kind of work out of, because I don't like putting my pack on the ground.
Yeah. Creepy crawlies and all sorts of stuff.
It's not really that. It's more the, oh crap, rain's coming in and I forgot. I'm off doing something else away from the campsite and I left my pack sitting on the ground and now it's
in standing water.
And even
or whatever.
I mean, think about that though. Even if it's under a vestibule and you've got running water that's coming by in a rainstorm, it's gonna get your pack soaked.
Yeah.
So, it's just
all your heavy stuff at the bottom of the pack is getting wet.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's an important consideration. If you are going to leave a pack under a vestibule, try to put something under it to elevate it so that if something happens like that, it's not going to get soaked. Or just ensure you've got waterproof stuff sacks in your bag and whatever gets wet is not going to be a big deal.
Right.
So that's the other way to look at it.
Yeah, I like that you said tent first because especially at our last muster, it was people getting there and wanting to set up their camp chairs and the fire and all that kind of stuff, and then they don't set the tent up. And I'm always thinking, like, well, what if it starts raining?
Tents are always the last thing that people think about.
I know, and it's like the most important thing when it comes to shelter from storms and things like that. But you want to just leave it till the end. Just make sure your camp chair's set up.
I've seen that time and time again too. Like I've done competitions before where people get into wherever we're rucking to, and they won't set up the tent first. And I've seen at least twice I can remember that it started raining.
Yep.
Not 10 minutes before we got in, and my tent was already set up, and they were like, "Oh shit, we got to set up our tent." Like, yeah.
Well, should have thought about that first.
Yeah. So I don't know. Probably a lesson that everybody's got to learn themselves.
Sure.
But yeah, I would recommend that for sure. And then let me think of other things. So you got campfire, which is important.
Especially if you're going to be cooking over it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you brought stuff to cook over a fire.
So that's an important consideration too. If you do have stuff that you're dependent on a fire for cooking and you didn't bring like a backpacking meal, you would definitely need to get the fire going soon too, so you can start the coal process. And
I see a lot of people do that where they put a cast iron pan or something like just directly on flames. Like, man, that's just wait a little bit.
Yeah,
give it time. Get that even heat.
That's the thing, though. You wouldn't think that coals are capable of cooking. Like, in theory, if you're looking at a campfire and you see someone, like, scrape some, maybe some semi-red hot coals off to the side, you're thinking, oh, you can't really do anything. Dude, you can cook a whole meal on those.
Yeah,
so
that's the thing I like to do is take a little piece of paper and put it on coals and just wait, and it'll just ignite.
Yeah.
It's like there's tremendous heat in those. That's why it's the thing that's left in the morning.
Yeah, and I mean, charcoal briquettes are a perfect example of that, and it's not the same thing as a coal from the fire.
Purpose designed for that.
Yeah, but those things generate a crap load of heat too. I mean, I've cooked Dutch oven cobblers on 8 of those, and a couple on the top, and you just rotate it around, and that burning charcoal is enough.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've actually cooked Dutch oven cobblers right on coals from the fire too. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. It's you get a lot of heat that way.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's always good to have a little area in the fire pit where you're building a fire to scrape things like that off to the side for. So if your fire pit allows it, if it's not like a little fire ring where it's going to be difficult to do that in, that's a good consideration too if you're looking for a spot. But let's see. So we talked about rain a little bit. Cover, obviously, if you have a... you can kind of take the chance if you have a rain fly, whether to put that on or not, when you get there.
I like going with the rain fly usually.
Yeah.
I'm just not
I always chance it because I always tell myself, well, I can just put it on real quick.
Yeah.
And usually...
You get burned at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I've really never gotten burned by that. I'll typically trust the weather enough to know whether I need to do that or not. But
nice.
Yeah. I am always worried about it, though, if I do that. And then, I don't know. So order of operations, what do you do when you get to the campsite?
You get the shelter up, you get your tent, you get your fire going if you're cooking on it, and then I always try to structure what I would consider like daylight activities. Like if I'm doing any type of cooking prep, like cutting vegetables or anything like that, all that kind of stuff sucks to do in the dark. I try to do that before I go, like just bags of diced vegetables rather than cutting it.
And that's a very good method.
Yeah.
Yes.
You might not get as fresh tasting, but it's so much more valuable when you can just dump it in. And then if I have enough time and daylight, I'll try to cook prior to doing that because I can see the food a little bit better. Usually if I have to bust out a headlamp and cook like that, I don't get as good of a meal because I'm just rushed. But yeah, other than that, it's just kind of, if I have activities I'm going to do, like reading or anything like that to relax, I'll try to do that structured in the daylight hours. I like to get to a campsite at like 2 in the afternoon if I can, to really give myself enough time to, like you said, walk around, grab some firewood, get the tent set up, and then I just gather as much firewood as I possibly can because it never ends up being enough. I'm always running in the dark looking for more firewood to get.
Agreed. And that's kind of a lesson learned from camping too, is that you want to get as much as you think you need and then some more.
Yeah. So even more. Just keep going.
Yeah. I think that's enough. Okay, we'll get one more.
Especially on a multi-day trip.
Yeah.
Like if it's the first day of a multi-day trip, just keep loading it in. No problem with that. And then usually, like you said, I'll set up a clothesline or like a place to hang gear and stuff like that. And I usually try to, if I have a vehicle, I'll get the vehicle set up for like if I had to leave or somebody got hurt or something. So if it's an area, you can keep the keys either in the seat or on you, and then you know where they are. But like not having everything just thrown all willy-nilly in the vehicle, so if you did have to drive off, everything doesn't just like crash.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Being ready to evacuate if you needed to in a hurry.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you had to, you could probably leave your tent, but...
Right.
Yeah.
And that's how I try to keep my pack and stuff, too. I see a lot of people just kind of, like, lay all their stuff out. They'll bring a cot and just, like, lay it all out.
It makes my skin crawl.
No, just keep it all in the bag. You brought a bag for a reason.
It's that gypsy camp over there.
Yeah. And then if you need to, you just grab it and you can go.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'll also try to structure, like if I'm going to be in camp for a while, I'll usually try to refresh stuff like knot tying,
Yeah.
or I'll lash together some small structure. Like I've put together a wash basin before from lashings.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I'll try to make something cool campcraft wise.
Like a project.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Kind of keep my mind busy and refresh skills and things like that too. That's what I like to do when I camp. I like to use camping time as a way to tell myself, hey, I've got to practice some skill.
Sure.
What am I going to do? Am I going to bring some locks to mess with and do some lock picking there when I'm sitting around? Am I going to, bring some natural fiber rope? I'm going to do some lashings and build something. I always try to pick something to do.
Yeah.
That's
Even
if
awesome.
it's just bringing a piece of rope and practicing knot tying. It's just, I always try to do some kind of skill. If I'm going to be there multiple days. I mean, if it's just like an overnight trip, probably won't be much time for that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
The other thing I'll do is designate like a garbage station.
Yep.
Like tie in the bag or something. And then I always try to dump that bag prior to going to sleep because I'm not a big fan of raccoons getting all up in my stuff.
That's a very easy thing to lash together too, is a little trash bag.
Yeah.
You just use 3 different, you basically do a tripod lashing, and then it's kind of like not really inverted, but you're doing a tripod lashing in the middle of 3 spars, and then you kind of spread it out, so you've got a base, and then you've got 3 in the air.
Okay.
Can you visualize that? It's like and then you kind of put your trash bag over that, so it's like a kind of a field expedient.
I like that.
Trash bag holder.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a picnic table.
Yeah.
Because that's usually what I tie mine to. Is a picnic table.
Right.
Those wild picnic tables you find.
Scattered all over the bush.
That is something that I try not to utilize if I am in a campsite that has a table. I try not to just like lay all of my stuff out because it just gets, I don't know, you get bugs and stuff on it, and then you'll, I don't know, pack it up.
When we did that alumni muster, it was like people used people's stuff everywhere. Drove me insane.
It's just storage at that point. Yeah.
It's like, get your shit off the table.
And honestly, like in reverse, I do the same thing. I like when I'm packing, I try to pack it exactly the way I packed it going out, because I think a lot of people just like to kind of bundle it all up and toss it in there and not even pack the tent up and stuff. And I always try to clean the tent out, dry it out, and then fold it up perfectly. That way, when it goes into the vehicle, I don't have to worry about it the next time I'm going camping, like tent's ready.
Yeah, I almost always evidently run into the issue of the floor of my tent being moist whenever I'm packing it up. It's very moist.
I don't know what, it just threw me off.
Yeah, it's that sick twisted mind of yours going to the gutter.
That moist tent floor.
Yeah, but I mean, there's always...
That's true.
There's always dew or something on the tent, and more than likely... we're like I'm leaving that morning because I want to get on the road, that type of thing, and I'll have to wind up just flipping the tent upside down and trying to dry it as much as I can before I pack it up. But evidently, there's always
sometimes
moisture
you can't.
in there.
Yeah.
And when there is, you should always take it out when you get home and at least not necessarily set it up, but at least flip it on that.
So it can air out.
Yeah, flip it on that side so it can finish drying out and stuff like that too, because that's not something you want to open your tent to, is dry rot and then go, oh, I don't have a tent to camp in while I'm here because there's a huge hole in it. Yeah.
I'm going to make a bivvy.
Right. But, most modern synthetic fabrics, you really don't have to worry about that much, but it is still something you want to keep an eye on.
Something you had that I still have been meaning to pick up is the little broom and dustpan.
Oh, yeah.
Which looks like the funniest thing in the world.
It's a lifesaver,
It's like the most useful thing, because I had to push a little pile of dirt in the corner of my tent this year with my hands.
That's how you know how anal retentive you really are when you go camping, is do you carry a little dustpan and a broom with you? Guilty.
Well, I'm just baling dirt with my hands otherwise.
Yeah. No, I brought that, larger Oz tent this year to the alumni muster, and I just threw a full-size broom in my truck. I was like, you know what? I'm not even screwing with it.
Just sweep it out.
I'm going to go true glamping at this event. Yeah. I literally brought a full-size broom. But then I still had a dustpan because,
hey,
I have that tub bottom on the tent. So
you don't want to scoop up.
There's nothing to scoop.
It doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, anal retentive
That's
problems.
great.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a little bit about setting up a campsite, and hopefully people glean some information from that. I mean, I'm always trying to perfect my camping technique, and I know that sounds weird, but I always learn lessons every time I go.
Yeah.
And if you don't write those down, you don't try to retain it, you'll definitely lose it. And I'll kind of conclude with the thing I always say when I come back from camping. It's sorting everything that I took into those 3 different piles. Like, I used it, I didn't use it, and then I didn't use it, but I had to have it, like
Right.
medical gear.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where the more you can do that, the more you start to refine what you actually are taking. And you learn that, I've been taking this stupid lantern for the
Right.
last 4 trips, and I've never used it,
Yeah.
and it's not one of those things I had to have. Like, I'm
Right.
just going to leave it this time.
Yep.
So, yeah. Lessons learned are very important from camping. Thanks for tuning in to Gear Tasting Radio. As always, use the pound tag Gear Tasting on any social media network, and we will find your questions and address them here on the show. Even if we don't specifically read your question, they will enable us to talk about different topics that you might be interested in, so drop them anyway. And if you're interested in listening to more episodes, which I hope you are, you can consider subscribing on Apple Podcasts. We're on there, and if you leave us a rating and review, hopefully it's 5 stars. I won't twist your arm, but we do feel like the show is pretty important. So, if there's something that doesn't warrant 5 stars, use the pound tag Gear Tasting and tell us why.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, tell us
prior
about
to
it.
that submit button.
You can gripe us out on social media. It's okay. We get that all the time. So, subscribe if you're willing to. We got a new show coming out every Tuesday.
Yep.
And thanks for tuning in to Gear Tasting Radio. One more thing. If you like what we're doing here on Gear Tasting Radio, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/ITS Tactical. Choose to support us if you'd like. We have some things to give you in return. Thanks for listening.